Is there any evidence that our kids are getting sort of physically weaker or physically?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, we have data in the United States. I mean, we have this thing called the presidential fitness test, right? That was started, I think maybe it was Kennedy started. Some president a long time ago started it. So we have decades worth of data, and kids today are less fit. Absolutely. Ask any Army recruiter, they'll tell you that fewer and fewer Army recruits are physically fit and able to be.
What about strong in terms of bones and our skeletal structures?
Yeah, I mean, the rates of osteoporosis are going up, and one of the reasons for that is that loading our skeleton when we're growing up causes the skeleton to accrue mass, to grow bone. If you don't exercise, right, and especially weight-bearing forms of exercise, you don't grow as much skeleton, and then when you hit, normally people stop adding bone around 25 to 30, right? So I don't know how old you are, but
31.
All right, so that's it. You have no more bone to add, and for the rest of your life, you're going to start losing bone, right?
Sugar.
But fortunately, you look like a reasonably fit person who was very physically active, so you probably built up enough bone. So having a high level of bone when you're 25 to 30, as you lose bone, that's going to protect you from falling below that threshold that's going to give you osteoporosis. But if you aren't physically active when you're young, you have less bone to start with, you're still lose bone, and you're going to be much more likely to fall below that threshold. You're much more likely to get osteoporosis, and rates of osteoporosis are rising. Again, it's another one of these mismatched diseases that's rising radically throughout the world. Exercise also helps prevent bone loss because it suppresses the cells that essentially cause our bones to start being resorbed. So it's kind of a double whammy. Not enough exercise when you're young, you have less peak bone mass. Not enough exercise when you stay old, your bones are going to lose mass at a more rapid rate.
I was reading in your book that teen tennis players can become 40% thicker and stronger when they become older because they were using
in the arm that they use. Yeah. So,
really?
So when you play tennis, right, the arm that you use, which is whacking the ball, that's getting more loading than the arm that you simply use to throw the ball in the air. So there's an asymmetry. So the humerus, the upper arm bone of tennis players, can be like 40% thicker in the arm that they use to whack a tennis racket. Just the bone. Yeah. It's a beautiful experiment, natural experiment in our body to show the importance of loading. That loading causes your skeleton to respond, because our skeletons are like other tissues in our bodies, respond to demand, right? We match capacity to demand. If you don't demand something of a tissue, it's not going to grow the capacity, because otherwise it's going to be wasting energy, right?
I know that about muscles. I knew that muscles grow and expand, but I didn't think I had any say in the development of my bones.
Absolutely. Yeah. Loading your bones is one of the factors that we talked about it earlier. That's why people who eat harder food, that's less processed, grow larger jaws, right? Our jaws have shrunk by about 6%, we showed, by about 6% since we started processing all our food, because we're just loading our jaws less, right? That's another example.
What we eat and how we eat, I think it was James Nestor that said, the way we chew impacts what our face looks like when we become adults. So if a baby's chewing lots of soft foods, when they grow up, they're going to have like a small jaw.
Yeah, that's research I did, actually.
Oh, yes. Really? I think he cited you.
Yeah. So how your chewing affects the shape of how your jaw grows. And so it is true that we have smaller jaws today than we used to.
Is there a consequence to this?
Well, so one consequence is increased rates of malocclusion, right? There's just not enough room for our teeth to fit into our jaws. So now we have to go to the orthodontist to get our wisdom teeth removed because there's not enough space for them.
Okay, so if I just get my kid chewing hard food from the jump, then his wisdom teeth will be fine.
It might be the case, yeah. So the experiment I'd like to see somebody do, of course it's unethical, right? It would be to randomize two groups of kids, have one group of kids basically chew really hard resinous gum for like all their childhood, right? Because you're not going to get them to eat like, unprocessed hunter-gatherer food, right? But basically have them chew gum all the time. And then compare them to, say, their twins who don't chew that much gum, and let's see who, see how much of an effect it has on their jaw growth.
Puberty, the age in which women go through puberty has changed quite significantly.
Yeah.
And I couldn't figure out why.
It's energy again, right? It's about energy. Remember, life is about energy, taking in energy and using that to reproduce. So how much energy you have when you're growing up affects the rate at which you grow and the rate and your ability to switch from growth to reproduction. So we have data, for example, from France. There's good data from hundreds of years in France. I'm not sure why the French have such good longitudinal data. Maybe it's because of the Napoleonic Army or whatever. But we can show that 200 years ago, French girls were tending to go through puberty. They would start their menstrual. They went through what we call menarche when they start menstruating around the age of 16. Today, it's around 12 and a half, right? And that's because of more energy. We see that in the area of Kenya where we do field work, right? We're looking at the same population, Kalenjin-speaking people, and they're in the rural areas where, they have hard lives, right? They're working all day long. There's no machines. There's no electricity. There's not a huge amount of food. Girls, we go through menarche about 2 years later than in the urban area, just 50 kilometers away, where there's more food, there's more energy, there's more Coca-Cola, there's more whatever. And we call that the secular trend, right? So that girls are maturing earlier, they can reproduce earlier, because again, what does natural selection want you to do? It wants you to take in energy and use it to reproduce. That's what we're adapted for. So if you have more energy, we're evolved to do it earlier.
Does what we eat play a role in the sort of starting point of our stories and how we began to eat? I'm thinking about farming, hunter-gathering, and all those things. Because when I look at human beings versus a lot of animals, and you talk about this in the book, we are remarkably fragile and inadequate in comparison. Like, our eyesight isn't that great. We're like super weak. I think you say that like most monkeys are stronger than we are. Squirrels can run faster than us.
Well, I think we actually exaggerate our fragileness and weakness to some extent. So chimpanzees, our closest relatives, are probably about 30% stronger than we are. You would not want to arm wrestle a chimpanzee, right? And most quadrupeds can run way faster than we can, right? We have this sort of story about human evolution that it's been a sort of triumph of brains over brawn, right? That we have tools and language and that has enabled us to sort of conquer, the world and become the dominant species. And there's some truth to that, of course. So technology, language, communication, cooperation, all are essential parts of the human success story. But I think as athletes, we're pretty impressive. We can outrun most animals over long distances. So we're really impressive in terms of endurance, both men and women. We can throw, we can kick, we can do all kinds of things that my dog can't do. As far as diet is concerned, we're the ultimate omnivores. We can eat anything. Most animals have very kind of constrained diets. There are certain things they can eat. Most of the things out there they cannot eat. We've managed to figure out, because of technology, cooking, food processing, but also because of the nature of our digestive system, we can eat just about anything on the planet, right? People can be vegans. They can be, they can eat all meat diets. They can, it's astonishing how much variety humans can get by with. Our livers can turn anything into anything. We can turn fat into carbohydrates into fat. We have an incredibly astonishing range of foods that we can consume.
When we're thinking about our sort of evolutionary history and the hunter-gatherer tribes that still exist in the world, I think I've fallen into the trap of believing that all the answers we're looking for about how to be healthy humans in the modern world can be found just by looking back at our hunter-gatherer ancestors. Is that true, that they hold the answers to how to live a happy, healthy life?
Well, it's like everything, it's complicated, right? To some extent, we call that paleo fantasy, this idea that if you just go back to being a hunter-gatherer, that you'll have no problems, right? And that hunter-gatherers have no violence and they don't get sick and, all is well. Well, it's not so simple, right? I'll give you one example. Murder. We have this idea that, humans have become incredibly violent since the origins of farming, right? But if you actually look at the ethnographic record, hunter-gatherers are just as violent as the rest of us. They're human beings. They kill for passion. They kill for greed. They kill for, there's murder. There's warfare among hunter-gatherers, even in some parts of the world. Yes, it's true that hunter-gatherers don't have the same problems with obesity. They don't have metabolic syndrome. They probably don't get heart disease, at least to the extent that we do. There are plenty of things that they do that are worth emulating, but they're not role models in every respect. And what natural selection cares about is how many offspring we have who survive, right? That's the only thing natural selection cares about. It's the equation of life is food in, babies out, right? That's what we're here for, right? As far as natural selection is concerned.
Not happiness.
We're not here to be happy. We're not here to be nice. We're not here to be fulfilled or anything like that, although it's good when that happens, right? We evolved to be hunter-gatherers. Our ancestors were hunter-gatherers for millions of years, but the adaptations they have are primarily and first and foremost about reproductive success. So we didn't evolve to eat foods to make us healthy. We evolved foods that would increase our reproductive success. And we evolved to be healthy only to the extent that health promotes reproductive success.
If you love the Diary of a CEO brand and you watch this channel, please do me a huge favor. Become part of the 15% of the viewers on this channel that have hit the subscribe button. It helps us tremendously, and the bigger the channel gets, the bigger the guests.